Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Christine Brooks Cropper of DC Fashion Foundation and many other entrepreneurial ventures. She's definitely a serial entrepreneur, to say the least. So, Christine, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on. And before we jumped in, I want to read a little bit more about Christine so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And Christine is president and CEO of the DC Fashion Foundation and co-founder of The Collective, a creative business consultant firm. She's a proud mother to her son, Christian. And as president and CEO of the DC Fashion Foundation, she identifies ways to retain and support new and established designers, fashion retailers, professionals, and assist design students transitioning from school to career. Christine spearheaded the formation of the Commission on Fashion Arts and Events in DC government with the message that fashion is an asset to economic development. Her accomplishments have landed her in numerous press outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, Business Journal, Voices of America, Uptown Magazine, Washingtonian, Women's Wear Daily, which designated her the next fashion advocate leading the fashion industry by creating jobs in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore metro area, the United States, as well as the entire globe. Christine, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Yeah, I guess so. You said it was a mouthful, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take some water after this. And while I do that, I want to hear a little bit more on how you got started. Could you take us through your CEO story?
Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. I always tell people that CEO, you're kind of born with entrepreneurship mindset. So I would say I kind of was born into it. You know, my grandfather owned his own construction business, self-employed. My dad kind of followed in the footsteps. And then I went to college and, started modeling at 14, had my own designer management company by 19 while I was in college. And I had my own style fashion production company by 24 or 25. Then I started the Commission on Fashion Arts and Events by 30, 32. Then I created the Greater Washington Fashion Chamber of Commerce, a 501c6. And then that kind of led to the 501c3, which is the DC Fashion Foundation. So I would say I was born into, I think when I was a child, I was definitely on honor roll. I was all-American athlete, firstborn. I don't know if these are firstborn traits, that you're an overachiever, but I will say I was born a CEO because I wasn't that young girl that said, oh, I'm going to get married and have kids. I was that young girl that said, no, I'm going to be president and CEO of a company one day. Nice. So that was me. And I think that came from, this entrepreneurship that was in my family. And then also too, just every time I was interested in something, my family kind of embraced that and pushed me towards it. And they knew I just was that kid that you just knew how to figure it out, and they've always told me that I've always known how to find money. So my first words wasn't dada, which most babies say. My first word was actually money. So, so that kind of has been my journey ever since. So, so when it comes to fashion, it's just very interesting because I was a tomboy, I was an athlete, I was a jock. I mean, I was all-American, I was breaking records and I ran pen relays. I went to college on an athletic scholarship. And school came easy, so I was always on honor roll. So it was like I never even really thought about that. But when it came to like my dress and my mindset of, trends or style or pop culture or whatever it was, I was into Prince. I mean, as a kid, I was into Prince. I was into Sade. I was into Madonna, of course. And then I loved Versace, the designer. And most kids didn't like that, but I did. And that kind of shaped my whole fashion sense. I was that kid that didn't like to look like anybody else. I was never cliquey. So my whole thing is I was popular based on what I was doing. I created the first fashion club at my high school, did the first fashion show there as a fundraiser. And to this day, I want to say that they're still doing the fashion show, but I was the one that created that. Nice. So I used to design and if I saw somebody with something on that I had on, I mean, my mom tells this story all the time. She's like, I actually wanted this coat that was patchwork and it was multiple colors. And then I thought I was the only one that had it. And then I saw somebody with it and I actually and the coat was quite expensive. And I took the coat off and gave it to my mom and said, here you go, you can have the coat. So I was that kind of kid. So everyone kind of knew that I would kind of end up in fashion, but I started modeling at 14. I was discovered because I looked like you could beam me up to space because I always like to look unique and like don't look like anybody else. So so yeah, that's where I started. I think I kind of was just born with it.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. It's in you. It's a passion. I don't really think any CEO or entrepreneur, if they don't have that self-motivation or that determination or that perseverance or focused on something to make it happen, they're not going to be able to make it happen, because at the end of the day, if you don't believe and you don't have the dream, you can't sell it to anybody else.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I appreciate you for sharing that with us, having the entrepreneurial blood, the DNA inside of you, and just how that manifests itself. I think once you figure out that, I call it figure out ability. I don't even know if that's a word, but I feel like I made it a word, just so that you find a way to kind of create those opportunities. You find a way to find the money, find those ways to create those solutions in the world. And I know you have, different brands and different ways by which you do that. Could you take us through a little bit more of those? And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique, what I call your secret sauce.
Well, I mean, my secret sauce, I think, is really, it's really the drive. I mean, I think it's just the perseverance, and I think also too, I smile. It's just like I'm easily approachable. People are like, I talk to people well, and I explain things. I'm very detail oriented, and for me, it's like when I talk to somebody, it's kind of like I'm taking them through the story or on the journey to the point that when I'm finished saying what I need to say to get them to do what I want them to do, it's like they feel like they're there. They feel like they're a part of it. And I think that's my secret sauce, is because everything that I've done with all my businesses or any ideas or any endeavors that I pursue, any initiatives, I've always made people feel like it's theirs as well. So I really think that that's my secret sauce. I try to be inclusive as much as possible, have diversity and so forth. But my whole thing is everybody that gets involved with any of my endeavors, even my accountant was my CPA for a long time with the nonprofit. And it gets to the point that he retired in his 40s, his mid 40s, and started his catering business. But he was my accountant. He always did audits and accounting and bookkeeping and everything. And he was very great. He did my 990. He kept me financially sound. So, the IRS wouldn't audit me and so forth, but he also had a passion for cooking. So by him being around me and working with me, and that I give everybody that kind of drive, it kind of like oozes that passion and say, life is too short. What do you really want to do with your life? So he actually retired, resigned, and started his catering company, and he's going strong. I mean, even during the COVID, he's doing a lot of meal preps and catering and so forth, and it's happening. I mean, of course, at some point he wants to own a restaurant, but it's just the simple fact of being around me. You kind of like rub off on other people to say, there's more to life. What do you want to do? Like, what do you want? I always say, when you die, what do you want people to say about you? Did you really, really make an impact? Did you leave a legacy? I have one child. I have a son. He's 16. And it's like, do I have something to pass on to him? Do I have something where he'll have stories to say, I'm proud of my mother, or I'm doing this because of the drive and what I've seen from my mother, because he is majoring in international business. So, so hopefully he kind of goes down that path too of entrepreneurship and self-employment. But yeah, that's my secret sauce. I think it's just I make everybody feel like they belong.
Yeah, that's absolutely a huge thing, a great, lesson. And I think secret sauce, because you get that opportunity to really, like you said, not just, bring people along the journey, but also inspire them. And like you said, they feel a part of it. They get inspired to do and create that trickle effect, in their lives, I imagine as well, too. And so I know I read some of, the organizations that you've been able to start. Could you tell us a little bit more about those so we can learn a little bit more about what you're doing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let's see. So I had Style Movement Consultants. It was a fashion production company. So pretty much, in fashion, you do fashion shows. Fashion PR and marketing is like not normal PR and marketing. When you go into fashion, you got to like organize fashion shows. When you're in PR and marketing, you got to do trunk shows, sample sales, so stuff like that for the designer. And some of my clients were like the Congressional Black Caucus was my client through Style Movement Consultants with my partners at the time. And then we all kind of branched off. I mean, I ended up getting married and having Christian, my son. So that's when I kind of took a step back. And I was going into the next chapter of my life, and that was pretty much my third business by that point. So I was going into my 30s, having my son. So I was like, you know, it's a big 3-0. Oh my gosh, you know, you're no longer in your 20s. You know, it's like you're an adult now. You have a husband and you have a kid. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now I pretty much was like, okay, what do I want to do in my life? And at that time, I was also working for Mayor Williams, the mayor for Washington, D.C. I created the Office for Victim Services for him through an executive order. So I kind of was laying the groundwork, and with my education, my work experience and so forth, that I was the go-to for creating infrastructure. I was the go-to for laying the foundation of things. So pretty much it's kind of like anything that didn't exist, like fashion in DC, even though it did exist, you know, they had their own culture from the 80s and 90s. I mean, fashion in DC really comes from the neighborhoods, because all the neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. are very unique. So if anything, when people say fashion doesn't exist in D.C., oh my gosh, in the 80s and 90s, you had Madness, you had Shooters, you had All for One, you had, because all that was tied to go-go. So it's like go-go, you had the new music, that sound of music, you had your fashion, your street fashion. But then you have this other side of fashion that's about going to the galas. And we have, I mean, of course, we're in COVID right now, but pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, we'll be getting back to business in DC, because we do nothing but mingle and network. Every night we have a dinner. Every night we have a gala. We have some fundraiser for some foundation. Every trade association here and every foundation is here. So that's where I was doing a lot of that work, kind of fashion production. Then from a fashion show that I did with all Black designers, of course, for Congressional Black Caucus, I started to see that Black designers were not treated the same way as white designers or any other designers of whatever nationality they are, and also too, as well as male, female, and sexual orientation as well. So, so when I went out on maternity leave and then you know, came back, I ended up dissolving my production company because I was going in my 30s. And I said, what's next for me? I ended up resigning from my position with Mayor Williams. And I said, I really want to pursue and create infrastructure of creating a fashion commission. That was all supposed to be created through not so much legislation, but an executive order for DC, like I did for the Office for Victim Services. However, the mayor that was coming in was Fenty. Williams was going out. So pretty much I ended up getting the attention of Marion Barry, who was on city council at the time. And I got his attention as well as some of the other city council members, and they end up introducing it as law, you know, so that means that's great because now it's law. So in the books, every mayor that gets elected, they have to appoint a chair to the fashion commission that falls under the deputy mayor for economic development. So everything that I said, you know, when I had these companies and worked for Mayor Williams, and I said fashion is an asset to economic development, I figured out a way of how to take my education, my work experience, my passion, put it all in one and do something with it. And I did. And guess what? It's tough. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to, you know, throw things out there and throw it up on the wall, see what sticks. A lot of people said it wouldn't happen, but it did. And I think that happened because, again, when I went to do the advocacy, when I had to testify at the hearings to get the legislation passed, they could feel the passion that I knew what I was talking about. I was in the industry. It was very needed. And then also, too, I created the Greater Washington Fashion Chamber of Commerce in 2007 to help me with this process of getting this legislation passed. So that's where I ended up doing rallies. I ended up doing policy issue forums, bringing the people that were underground and designers, models, hairstylists, makeup, a curator at the Smithsonian museum that went to fashion school and they're doing something with regards to style or curating that's still design, that's still humanities, you know? So it's like I started just pulling everybody in arts and humanities and sports and entertainment and film and, you know, music and everything, because we cross over, even with the nightlife scene, we cross over when you're in the creative economy. So I ended up creating that trade association. That meant that about, I would say, I don't even know how long it took, 300 people signed up as a member immediately. I was able to take that stats before and testify before city council to say, here, they kept calling me the fashion industry or the fashion girl. I'm not the industry. And the industry was here long before I was even born, you know? So because I also brought out the women that were the trailblazers, like Jackie Hart and Janice Rankins that was here that had her Sew and Know program. They're all in their 70s and retired now. I'm in my 40s, but I made sure that I knew what they were doing, invited them and had a part of it. It's just that I was able to organize it. I was able to monetize it. I was able to get the attention and get legislation passed. Like, people are so amazed at that time. That's why I was featured in all, you know, Women's Wear Daily and Wall Street Journal and Modern Luxury. And they were now calling me the fashion advocate because I was on Capitol Hill. I worked with Carolyn Maloney, who was of the 33rd District in LA. You know, she's retired now, but I'm sorry, Diane Watson was the 33rd District of LA. She's retired now. Carolyn Maloney is the shopping district in New York. Nadler is the garment district in New York. The three of them got together and co-created the Fashion Commission, the Fashion Business and Entrepreneurial Manufacturing Caucus on Capitol Hill. And that's all because Diane Watson knew who I was, and she was the subcommittee chair for the entertainment industry. So she called me and she was like, she remembered the days when I did the Congressional Black Caucus fashion shows. And she said, I want you to help me bring fashion into this entertainment subcommittee. And I was like, no, we want our own committee. We want our own caucus. Like, we don't want to be a subset of entertainment, because that's the problem. Because when it comes to entertainment, yes, designers make dresses and they walk the red carpet, but that's like a one of a kind or a designer making something that's more of a style thing. Then what's going to happen? The celebrity or the actor or actress is going to get more of the shine, not the designer. The only time they ask a celebrity something is, who are you wearing? They'll say it, but it's kind of in your thought and out your mind, you know? So I'm like, let's create something that we just focus on this industry, because it is an industry. There's professions, there's jobs. Like, these are people that are jobbers. There's someone that just sews. There's someone that just makes patterns. There's someone that just does the finishing and put the buttons on. I was like, there's a whole supply chain that we have to address. So one, that we can keep the industry going and sustain the industry. At that time that I was really, advocating and getting a lot of this stuff put in place is the same time that the Save the Garment District initiative was taking place in New York with Nanette Lepore and Anna Sui and Michael Kors, I think, was a part of it. I know Diane von Vusenberg was a part of it. So they were CFDA, they were starting to get all of the designers behind, because, they wanted to get the design piracy legislation passed on Capitol Hill. So by me being in DC, it's like I organized a lot of policy forums with Nanette Lepore. Giorgio Gucci, the descendant of the House of Gucci, was on Capitol Hill with me talking about counterfeiting in the Black market. So my whole thing is that I end up positioning myself as that public policy, because I had a master's in public administration, and I knew how to navigate DC. Yeah. That's the thing. A lot of people, they weren't successful because they didn't figure out how to navigate DC. You got to talk your language. So for me, by my educational background, I was able to talk that government language. I was able to talk that getting legislation introduced and passed, or write the legislation. Then I was able to talk on the creative side with my community so that I can start to bring the two together. And that's what I did. It just so happened that I just was the one that just could speak all languages and organize and make something happen. Now, the Greater Washington Fashion Chamber of Commerce had its members, but it got to the point that a lot of the members needed more professional development. A lot of the members needed more business development. Why is that? Because creatives and business I mean, it should go hand in hand, but when it comes to a creative mind, sometimes when you start talking numbers like create a 5-year pro forma, I need a balance sheet, I need a profit and loss sheet, a cash analysis, I need a business plan. They're looking at you like, no, no, and no. I don't have any of that. And I'm like, why not? Aren't you registered? Are you incorporated as an LLC? Then it's like, then you start up a whole nother conversation. It's a whole nother world that they just was like, no, I went to school for fashion, or I went to art school or whatever. I just want to do what I do and create. I just want to make. So that's where that was that gap that I said, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. So then that's when I ended up creating the DC Fashion Foundation so I could go after, which is the C3. So then I can start to go after grants, because at the end of the day, these creatives, they couldn't afford to keep paying dues, and they just constantly needed professional and business development classes. So that's when I ended up creating the Fashion Incubator, and they could go in, and then our curricula was pretty much a year long, whether they were in the residency for 1 year or 2 years, they were in there to get like the business of fashion. So it's like, for me, my journey started at 14, this little tomboy, you know, girl personality, to now I've got legislation passed and laid the infrastructure for the mayor to go on NPR with Kojo Nnamdi, you know, in her first term. And he asked her what was the new industry, and she said fashion. That's when I said my work is done.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, okay, what's next? Then what was next is consulting. So that's when I ended up starting my consulting company, you know, CBC Management, which is my initials, Christine Brooks Cropper Management. I created a collective, which was supposed to be a marketing arm. That kind of, we dissolved that because I was the only female, and the other guys that were involved with me, the males, we all had our own separate kind of companies, and it was kind of hard. We thought we could come together and bring all of our like partnerships and our resources together to create one, but it's like when you're already doing something, working with a client, it kind of takes over. And so we end up dissolving that, and we still work together, we collaborate, but we just collaborate with our LLCs of what we own. And but the whole collective was for that purpose. And then I end up starting a sex wellness business when I hit my 40s. So that's how you evolve.
Well, I appreciate that. And what I wanted to do is switch gears a little bit. I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack, which is kind of like an app, a book, or a habit that you have. What's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
What makes more effective and efficient for what? You said
your business, like a CEO hack.
A CEO hack. I mean, makes me more successful. I think sometimes just maybe you got to step back and observe and not act like you know it all. You know, so, and I actually had to learn that, you know, because I growing up was like a little know-it-all, you know, it's like I was always reading, I was always in something, and I was always in grown folks conversation. So that's why I always act like, you know, I'd rather be around an OG. And I will also say, when I say be around an OG, because I'm still kind of old school, even though you have all the social media, it's like my thing is I get the most from that one-on-one conversation, that one-on-one connection, and also having mentors throughout my life and my career. You know, I feel like mentorship is very important. So I had a mentor through everything when I was in high school, to my athletic days, to me starting businesses. I had a mentor for when I got married. I had a mentor for me having a child. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to talk to somebody. Mentorship is like a support group. It's pretty much like you come together and you have someone that you can bounce ideas off of. And then, I mean, of course, you know, with that comes wisdom as you age. So yeah, starting as a freelance model at 14, then having my own designer management company. And I had an interior designer and a fashion and costume designer who actually was on the hit HBO show The Wire out of Baltimore, because I'm originally from Baltimore. And that at 19, I had a designer management company. I mean, I just kept moving. And then by 24, a fashion production company, then starting this whole fashion initiative full time for the past 13 years. It's been like where I don't work for anybody else, you know? So, but my whole thing is I had to learn along the way, get ready, slow it down a little bit, you know, because I was always like quickly, I was like, get it done. And And people love that because they knew, oh, if we hand it off to her, whether they like me or not. And that's another thing with I would say this, the hack or the success or the secret.
That'd be like a nugget.
I mean, it's another nugget is everybody's not going to like you. It's okay. It's okay. You know, when you're a CEO or an entrepreneur, you don't have to be friends with everybody. And the thing is, you just need to do what you do and be great at it. Because at the end of the day, people will give you the respect for that and people will get behind you, but they don't have to like you and you don't have to like them. You know, but see, when you start as a young entrepreneur, you want everybody to like you. And it's like, and then you start to hear stories come to you. You got to have tough skin too. You know, you have to be ready for that lack of sleep. You have to be ready for, you know, someone saying no to you. You're going to have more no's, more doors closed in your face than yeses. So I always tell people that's not failure. That's just a little more fuel or a little more energy to put behind your passion and your perseverance and your determination to make something happen of what you need to make happen. But I mean, it's many times that things have come back and people have what they have. They just make things up. This whole reality of who I am in their head. And it's like, it's not even me. And that's because you don't know me. You may have seen me in a cover or something. You may have seen me in a fashion show or given an interview on the press, you know, carpet or whatever. And then when I get in there, I'm one of those people that like to chill, have my whiskey, have my cigar in the corner, observing, chilling and paying attention and just watching everything and taking it all in. Because sometimes you can learn a lot by just being quiet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I want to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. We're open to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Christine, what does being a CEO mean to you?
It means being a badass. No, I get it. You know, a CEO, I will say this. To me, a CEO, I mean, of course, it's the chief executive officer, but I mean, that's what the acronym CEO is for. But I will say you're just a visionary. The CEO is the visionary and you're the change agent. So, you know, you're the person that has to make everybody believe. You have to make everybody believe in your vision. You have to make people follow you. You know, so are you a leader or a follower? As a CEO, you're a leader. You're a natural born leader because CEOs, whether they get appointed as a CEO or hired as a CEO, or guess what, like what I did, I made myself a CEO. And that is a true CEO, you know, because you don't stop. You're determined to make something happen. And the main thing is make a huge change, you know, depending on what your company is, what your industry is and everything. But at the end of the day, after 31 years being in fashion, actually can stop and say, I made an impact. I made an impact on my community. I made an impact on the 1,000 kids that went through my Camp Runway program during the summer, and they got paid to go to it because it was a workforce development program called Camp Runway. So, you know, one student going to design school or even coming out of Southeast or wherever they are, Northeast, Northwest, wherever they are in DC, and actually went to college, you know, that they didn't think they could get to college, and just going through my program. And I made them believe that, yes, you can do anything that you want to do. So it's, you know, when you get into that CEO, you know, role, don't think it's all about money. Yeah, the money might be great, but also think about your role and what that means to you. Because when you're a CEO and you're a change agent or a visionary, people are always looking at you. So therefore you're a role model, you know, so you have to always think about, you know, how you're talking to people, how your image is and so forth. And my whole thing is, I just say, walk in your truth. Because for me, you know, I don't really concern myself with what people say or think about me. I just know that I need to make sure that I make an impact on a community, a person, the industry, or whatever it is that I set out to do. And I would definitely say I probably have accomplished that.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that definition and that perspective about being a change agent and walking in your truth. So Christine, truly appreciate that definition. And I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they can get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things you're working on.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, so I'm president, you know, DC Fashion Foundation. So the website is dcfashionfoundation.org. We're on all social media platforms as DC Fashion FDN for the foundation, as well as DC Fashion Incubator, because that was the the site that I had the designers coming in and teaching them all the classes and everything. So we're still kind of keeping that going. And then I also have other businesses. I have JCR Consulting LLC is my management consulting company now. And that is, you can reach me at info@jcrconsultingllc.com if you want a business development or strategist to come on from the consulting standpoint. That goes all under that arm. And then I also have a sex wellness business that focuses more on sexuality and spirituality. It's, not anything ratchet. It's pretty much about chakras and energy and practicing Reiki and practicing Tantra and starting to get into foreplay. It's called Foreplay Matters, but it's FORPLAY matters.com is the website, because the E are red lips. So anytime you see the red lips, that's Foreplay Matters. So that's all my businesses. And I'm on Instagram with Foreplay Matters IG and Secret Society Life IG. And that website is foreplaymatters.com. And we're getting ready to put out some products in 2021 to start creating something like called Date Night in a Box, because everyone's like still quarantined and a little afraid to go out and get social in restaurants and so forth. So I'm trying to get ready to create a product called Date Night in a Box. So those are my three current business endeavors. All the other ones have kind of, created them, dissolved them. They didn't work, but I always tell people that's a serial entrepreneur. You're going to have probably more businesses and more failures or more no's than anything, but guess what? They're all successes because it leads up to exactly what you're supposed to do. So
yeah. Absolutely. I definitely appreciate that, Christine. We will have the links and information in the show notes so that everybody can follow up with you. You're absolutely right. I appreciate that reminder. There's a quote that says, I found out that 9 out of 10 businesses fail, so I decided to start 10 businesses. It's because you learn from them, and that leads you to the success that, just as you said. So
exactly.
Truly appreciate that. I appreciate your time as well. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.